Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling good out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I do hope everyone's having an awesome week out there so far. There is many things to talk about in this morning's video. A significant cool down is on the way for a good chunk of the country, so we're going to kickstart the video off by speaking on that. That's good news for a lot of people. Now, for some that like bacon alive out here in the summer heat, maybe that's not good news, but I think for most of us, we could definitely use a cool down. So we're going to speak on that, talk about how cool it could get for your neck of the woods and all that good stuff. And then we'll give you an update on the tropics, and then we'll round the video off with an update on today's weather. There is the potential for a significant flooding event across areas of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast for today. So we'll spend a lot of time on the Northeast timestamp of today's forecast. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. And then stay tuned for the very end. We'll have a Bible devotion. We'll talk in the Word and all that good stuff. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is current conditions as far as temperatures right at this moment. I'm going to draw on this a little bit and really show you the temperature gradient or boundary. It's not super distinct, but you can really tell where it's at as far as separating very warm temperatures, at least for morning condition standards, and cooler conditions. So I'm going to draw a line right through here. So that's sort of where our boundary is, sort of separating cooler air, just cooler air, not cold air, but cooler, drier air with moist, warmer air. You got temperatures this morning only dropping to like 80 degrees, for example, in Little Rock and like Charleston down to Savannah. Of course, this is, for the most part, normal, typical stuff along the Gulf and southeast coastline. It's very hard for it to drop below 80 degrees for low temperatures this time of the year. But once you get inland, this is definitely warmer as far as low time temperatures. So, I mean, you're only waking up to the upper 70s for temperatures like all the way up into Indiana, Illinois. So what I'm trying to say is you got a lot of moist air, you got a lot of warm air, even for morning, definitely for morning standards down here below this yellow line that I just drew. Now north of it, some cooler air, not anything crazy this morning at least. We could get much cooler air tomorrow morning. We'll speak on that, but you know, temperatures are say in the 40s for like up here. But 50s and 60s for the most part. So I would say the core of this cooler air mass and drier air mass hasn't really worked in yet, but it's in the process of doing so this morning. And you can tell if you look at the 24-hour temperature change in these areas, in some cases it is 10 to as much as 15 degrees cooler this morning than it was at this time of yesterday morning. But if you do look in sort of this area, you know, right into here, I mean, it's a degree or two one way or the other, nothing too crazy. And even like in Nebraska, I mean, it's not much different than say it was yesterday, but the core of the cooler air mass is really in this area right here where temperatures, you'll definitely notice when you walk outside, it's definitely cooler compared to yesterday morning. Another way to really gauge this, and I'm showing you this for a reason, I don't want to bore you to death, but if we look at dew points, guys, this is a better way to gauge what the air mass is right now, where it is right now. And cooler, drier air. So this is measuring how humid it is in the atmosphere, how dry or how moist it is. So dew points, say, in the 60s and 70s, like in this purple area down here, which is covering up a large portion of the southern tier of the country. Dew points in the 70s that you're seeing, even some low 80s, is very humid tropical air. And this is surging all the way up into the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, all the way up into southern New England. But if you look kind of right here in this region, kind of right into here, you got dew points that go from the 60s to the 50s to the north. So some drier air surging in. And this will eventually make it, you know, all the way down here into here, and even try to get all the way into the Carolinas, Georgia, and portions of the Southeast as it sort of gets situated east of the Appalachian Mountains. A little bit of a cold air damming setup, and we'll speak on that more here in a second. But this area right here, too, will be replaced with some drier, cooler air. So that's, you know, a much better way to gauge what kind of atmosphere we are dealing with looking at dew points, because that does drive really how low your temperatures can potentially get. So just want to show you current conditions now. temperatures compared to average, and what you're looking at right here is that this is the Euro ensemble. We're going to start off tomorrow about midday, early afternoon, depending on your time zone. You compare it to Zulu time, so 18Z tomorrow. It's August 1st, by the way, getting closer to what I consider the best time of the year, the Burr months, if you will. But anyways, the blue and the greens, I mean, that's anywhere from 3-4 degrees below your average temperature, depending on where you are. That is definitely different. To as much as 10 to 15 degrees below average. So, for example, if your average high temperature is 85 degrees, maybe in the middle of the country this time of the year, 85, 90 degrees, then maybe you're only getting into the 70s or something. So, as we start moving to tomorrow, you see the cooler colors, the blues and the greens. These are cooler than average temperatures. Don't focus too much on how cool, but we'll speak on that as we go. Now, as we start to get, say, into Saturday, some of that cooler air gets more positioned further to the east and southeast. So Saturday, for example, across Georgia, the Carolinas, up to Virginia, temperatures will be anywhere from 5 to as much as 10 to 15 degrees below average. So your average highs, for the first couple of days of August, for example, in like Columbia to Charlotte's like in the low 90s, or upper 80s. Your highs probably won't get out these 70s in some cases, but still a lot of cooler air up here in the Midwest too. And then we start to get into Sunday, still dealing with cooler than average temperatures. Starting to warm up in the southern plains, though, and a surge of warmer air is starting to move down into the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. And, I mean, even as we get into early next week, this is getting into Monday morning, still dealing with cooler than average temperatures, still a pocket of cooler air, really driven by a lot of rain and cloud cover down here. And we're going to talk about this here in a second because I don't want people to get confused like we're about to get temperature deep into the 50s across the south and you're going to need to pull out a light jacket or anything like that. But we could get some 60s for sure, and I'll speak on that here in a second. But even as we get into like next Tuesday, guys, I mean, still cooler than average temperatures are showing up on the Euro ensemble for the southeast. Starting to warm up in the middle of the country, a little bit of cooler air across the west, and some warmer temperatures are starting to move into the northeast, but it hangs around with us. Wednesday of next week, about a week from today, still dealing with some cooler than average temperatures across the eastern U.S., so it sticks with us for a while. Now, if we look at actual temperatures, these are predicted high temperatures for today across the middle of the country. We're getting into the 100s across Texas, even southern Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, upper 90s across Mississippi, even into Tennessee. But do you see the temperature gradient right here as far as high temperatures? You start to get in Missouri, Kansas, highs only in the upper 70s, low 80s for today. Now you move it into August 1st, tomorrow, you're still dealing with very warm temperatures across, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, but some of that cooler air is starting to move in. Not quite as warm in Oklahoma, Arkansas, highs only in the 80s. Can this make it all the way down to Texas and look up here? High temperatures in the low 70s across the core of the plains and the Midwest. I mean, this is where you could get a nice little almost taste of fall, like a tease of fall. But then we start to get into Saturday. You can see a warm up across the plains as we get just a return of the warmth here, moist return. We did a little break from the heat in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, maybe highs only in the upper 80s for that region, and a little kind of thump in the heat all the way down to Louisiana. Not much, but you're already starting to warm back up as we get into Sunday in these areas. The thing is this trough is really positioned further to the east, so it might not get as cool for areas like all the way down to Texas and Louisiana. Even Oklahoma is only probably going to get one solid 1 to 2 day period of cooler temperatures. And when I say cooler, that doesn't mean it's going to be cool. It just means it'll be cooler. So just remember that. But still Sunday, I mean, still nice across the Midwest, 70s. And then Monday, we start to warm back up, and then we're back into the 80s all the way back up into the upper Midwest by the time we're into next Tuesday. And then Wednesday, warming up even more, and the return of the upper 90s and low 100s across the southern plains. Unfortunately, do greet us here. But as far as low temperatures, look at these 50s. This is for tomorrow morning, sneaking all the way down into Missouri, Illinois. Not totally unusual for this time of the year, but you get to the 40s. I mean, that's definitely below average. But look at, chilly. Chilly, I would say, for August 1st standards here in the upper Midwest. I know I got a lot of loyal viewers up here. You guys will have to let me know how cool it gets in your neck of the woods. But even some low 40s showing up. I'm interested to see if we'll get in the upper 30s up here in the upper Midwest, northern Wisconsin. And then we look at Saturday morning. Lows could sneak all the way down to the upper 50s as far south as northern Arkansas. We're getting some lows in the 60s all the way down to Oklahoma, Tennessee, northern Mississippi. And then we start to get in the Sunday morning. I mean, definitely all the way down to the Ozarks. I mean, look, mid 60s all the way down to Little Rock. Look at this plume of 50-degree temperatures, sub 60-degree temperatures, I should say, across the Midwest, and just nicer conditions. And then it starts to warm up. Your lows begin to get higher. So, but looking across the eastern U.S., I know the majority of my viewers are from this area. You know, we look at high temperatures for today. Warm all the way up into the mid-Atlantic, very moist. But, you know, you start to get further into the northeast, New England. Highs only in the 70s. That cooler air begins to move in even today across Ohio. You know, Indiana, Illinois, highs only in the 70s. But, you know, you can see where the gradient is. There is a sharp temperature gradient where temperatures are only getting into the 70s for highs and then 80s and 90s. You don't have to drive only about a couple hours. And then we start to get into August 1st, tomorrow. And still a very hot day across the deep south, even into South Carolina, even in North Carolina. But there, for example, if you look at North Carolina, the southern areas of the state, highs in the 90s. Northern areas, highs in the low 80s. So cooler air sneaking into Tennessee, northern Alabama, highs only in the 80s. And then we get into Saturday, a little bit of a cold air damming setup, meaning cold air gets trapped east of the Appalachian Mountains, which is right here. So we could actually get, and it's going to be a soggy day, probably clouds, but it's going to make you feel like fall's around the corner. Highs only in the upper 70s, low 80s from Atlanta to Augusta to Columbia up to Charlotte, up to Raleigh. A nice, cooler. It's not going to be a day where you walk outside and you got the baby blue skies and you get that crisp fall air. It's in the 70s, but you don't feel no humidity. That's not what this is going to be for the Southeast. But it's going to be cooler. It's going to give your AC a break. And even though it's still going to be a little muggy outside, a little damp, a little cloudy, a little rainy, it's going to be nice. So, I mean, nice day across the Northeast, 70s and low 80s. But you can see there's some sort of thermal temperature gradient. And that looks like a classic cold air damming look to me. Like going just like that. So cold air damming could get all the way into northeast Alabama, which happens sometimes. Cooler air kind of surging down. But you get south of this boundary, and I mean highs Saturday are much warmer, back into summer type conditions. And then even Sunday, I mean, a little round of cooler air gets all the way down to Alabama. These are high temperatures. I mean, 70s all the way up into the Cumberland Plateau. A nice day. Who can complain about low 80s for highs in early August? And then it starts to warm up into Monday. I mean, this ain't going to last forever. You guys know that. But, I mean, even as we get into, like, Wednesday of next week, highs only in the upper 80s. I mean, that's still below average for a lot of areas in the Southeast, believe it or not. So what about low temperatures? This is a big thing people are wondering. How cool can it get in the morning? So waking up tomorrow morning, lows will be in the 40s and 50s across New England. Some 60s, of course, in the I-95 corridor, closer to the ocean. You get a little bit of a warm air influence. But, I mean, look at Ohio 50s, Indiana 50s, some 60s moving down to Kentucky, West Virginia. Starting into Saturday morning, some cooler air dropping down to North Carolina. Lows in the 60s as far south as Charlotte. Raleigh, some cool air will be working in all day. Even lows in the low 70s for like Columbia. For example, I'm looking at my weather station. I live in Columbia, South Carolina, and it's already 78 degrees. I mean, it only dropped down to, in fact, it's at its low temperature right now, 77.7. So even lows around 71, 72 will be a nice break. But you move into Sunday morning, I'm telling you, upper 60s does not sound cool, but it is going to be nice. Even from like Birmingham to Atlanta to Columbia, up to Charlotte, up to the Raleigh-Durham area, and of course points northwest. We're going to have some nice cooler air moving in. But, I mean, it's not going to be as cool probably in Tennessee. This little pocket of cooler air is really being influenced by, like I said, that cool air damming setup. It's hard to call it cold air damming because it ain't cold air. But, I mean, it's nice in New England. 50s, 50s in Ohio, Indiana, nice conditions. And then I'll have to get this in motion again. And then even looking at Monday morning, a nice start. A lot of people starting school next week. My kids are Monday. I mean, it's going to be a little touch of fall when you drop your kids off for school. It's going to feel like the start of a school year. I mean, it's saying low temperatures Monday morning, and I know I'm dragging this on, but I like talking about this stuff. It fascinates me, the transition from summer to fall, even though we're not really getting that right now. But just the little cool downs you can get as you get towards the back end of summer. I love it. I love talking about it. It's not significant, but it's the little things to me. But lows into the 60s, pretty far south. So a nice little break in the heat. And of course, Tuesday, low temperatures begin to get warmer and we just get the return back of summer. I mean, but it's nice. It's a nice break. Now, this is a great example of don't get so caught up on thinking you're going to need a jacket. This is the air mass. This is dew points. Dew points in the 70s and stuff like that. Very moist air. 60s. Still moist, but not that bad. Dew points in the 50s, nice crisp air and lower. So you're going to notice as we get into Saturday, we get into Sunday. Let's take it all the way to Sunday morning. We get a push of dry air. Dew points getting all the way into the 60s Sunday morning. All the way down to South Carolina coastline. Dew points in the 50s, though, in this area. Nice, dry air. I mean, it will feel a little bit like fall once you get into the Ohio Valley and even like northern areas of North Carolina, points north, and Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. But then you get into, look, dew points want to drop all the way down to the 50s as far south as almost Columbia. And then you start to get into, say, Monday morning. Just a nice little surge of dry air drops down to the southeast. I'm telling you, it's going to be nice. I'm excited about this. And, even all the way into Tuesday, we still got some dry air. And then you see the purple start to show back on your map here. But still not super moist out here. I mean, the 70-degree plus dew points get beat down for a several-day period. I don't know if you guys remember, but I would say it was about the third week of August last year. We had a incredible cool down that lasted several days across the South. This isn't, I don't think, going to be comparable to that. And it's even more impressive, even if it was, because it's happening in early August. But this is a nice cool down compared to what we've been dealing with. So now this cool down is going to come with a lot of weather with it, a lot of rain. So of course we do have a moderate risk of flash flooding across the mid-Atlantic today, and we're going to speak more on this. I'm not going to zoom into it right now because I have a segment for it later in the video. But there's going to be a lot of rain with this. So I'm telling you, this weekend's the perfect weekend just to chill out. You got a nice excuse across areas of the southeast just to relax and get some stuff done around the house, prepare the house for, the school year, and just always consider August kind of the transition month to a different time of the year, right? Especially if you got kids. So I know I'm going to be tomorrow. I got tomorrow off actually, and then I'm actually going to take the kids to the beach for the day Saturday, and it's probably going to be rainy and cloudy, but I'm cool. I'm always cool with a cloudy beach day. But anyways, not trying to get too off track. There is a slight risk for flash flooding Friday. And then even Saturday, higher flash flooding risk drops down to Georgia and South Carolina. So there is going to be a risk of flash flooding and rainfall between now and, next Tuesday evening. Several inches of rain is possible from southern Georgia, southern Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, northern Florida, up into eastern areas of just the Carolinas in general. So a lot of rain could fall in these areas, so for sure. Now let's talk about the tropics. I went on and on about that. Update on here. Guys, there's not a whole lot to talk about. The leftovers of this wave that we have been watching for a while are right here. You can see actually a little bit of a spin here, but it's really void of deep convection. You're not seeing the explosive oranges and red stuff that indicate colder cloud tops. Like, for example, these little areas right here, like in the Eastern Pacific's a good example of that. You're not seeing that over here with this. But there is another wave kind of moving off. But outside of that, I don't want to drag this on. There ain't a whole lot to circle out here. So what I'll tell you is National Hurricane Center says no tropical activity expected within now and the next 7 days. So we got that. What I also, though, will say is this is the Climate Prediction Center tropics outlook between the 6th and the 12th of August. This is like a week from today. It is saying that we need to watch this area right here off the coast of the southeast, even tucked into the southwest Atlantic and eastern areas of the Gulf. You see this red and white striped area right here. This is at least a 20% chance of tropical cyclone development. So I think this is really driven off frontal stuff we could have from homegrown activity. And we do have to watch any kind of waves that make it into the southwest Atlantic. And then between the 13th and the 19th, this is getting in the middle portion of the month, it is saying, I think this is really driven off a favorable MJO, I always say MJO pulse or something, I can't speak. An MJO pulse of rising air is probably going to allow for a more favorable period of tropical development out here in the main development region. So this is when we have to really start. And this is typical. Believe it or not, way out here in the Atlantic, there's normally only like a few week period where things are real favorable for tropical development. And that's normally like mid-August to about mid-September. So about a month. But it goes crazy out there and then it just drops off. So we're slowly getting closer to that time period. So saying, hey, watch out for the MDR, main development region, about mid-month. Now, I'm just going to take it a little bit closer to home on the Euro. Are we seeing anything? We are not. Only thing that it does is early next week, it does want to try to spin up something in the northern Gulf. So this is kind of new. And it actually throws this moisture as we get into early to midway next week over the southeast. And model guides has been teasing at this and could pose a flash flooding threat across the southeast as this big surge of moisture goes up the eastern seaboard. After a week, does it show anything? I mean, there is a wave right here that's barely noticeable here. But after that, I mean, there's a wave here, but it just doesn't do anything. So yeah, I mean, we got that, and we got the GFS, which goes about 10 days out here. Does it show sort of what the Euro is showing? It does show some moisture kind of hanging around this area, and then eventually sort of going over the southeast. What about anything else? There is the leftovers of a tropical wave sneaking into the eastern Gulf right here. Does this try to develop? There's something there, but it doesn't get going, and then we'll stop it right here. And there's really nothing else to show you. So we'll continue to watch stuff, but guys, I mean, outside of just closer to home, there's still going to be a lot, I think, tropical wave activity going through the tropical Atlantic. When I said that in yesterday morning video, I mean, that's what I mean it. You know, we're going to get a lot of tropical wave activity, but I just think that it's just too stable out there to really support any kind of development. So lower pressures out there, but I just don't think we're going to get a lot out of it. But we'll see, that could change. But looking at that lower level vortice, lower level energy in the atmosphere, you can see on the Euro how it does try to spin a little something up early next week in the northern Gulf, and eventually it tosses this back over land and gets thrown over the deep south and southeast, and this could just bring a lot of unsettled weather. So we'll certainly watch for all that. Now, let's give you an update on today's weather. This is current conditions, big slug of moisture going over the Ohio Valley, Indiana, a lot of rain moving over New York City. I'm sorry, New York State, just New England in general. We got rain dancing around underneath this ridge. Big plume of moisture surging through. So we got heavy rainfall. It was raining pretty good at my house this morning. Rain just off the coastline also. Some areas of rain across the southern plains, a little bit in the Texas-Louisiana line, just areas of rain elsewhere also. Watches, warnings, and advisories. The heat's getting beat down already. So if you notice, we're not seeing as much widespread heat advisory stuff out here and extreme heat warnings, but it's still there across the Mississippi Valley, the deep south, and areas of the southeast. And we got flood watches littered across the mid-Atlantic and southern New England, and that's there for a reason for sure, and we'll speak on that here in a second. It's getting dry out west, so we got a lot of red flag warnings. But as far as the Storm Prediction Center outlook, we do have a slight risk for areas in the mid-Atlantic. So we do have the flooding risk and a severe weather threat. This is kind of new from overnight. And this is really driven off a damaging wind threat. 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. The hail threat is at a 5% risk. And then we got the risk of severe weather. A little bit of a risk in Arkansas, level 1 out of 5. And then we got a risk of severe weather across the northern plains. Tornado threat is sub 2%. But listen, yesterday was sub 2% also. At least in the morning it was. And we ended up getting a tornado out of it. But the wind threat is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the hail threat has a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The flash flooding threat, just a long, pretty large marginal risk stretched across areas of the country. But this is a big storyline today. And a lot of people's worried about this higher populated area, DC to Baltimore to Philadelphia, Wilmington, almost up to New York City, a moderate risk of flash flooding. So this means there's a 40% chance of flash flooding occurring, flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles of any given location. So the atmosphere is going to be loaded in this area, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But there is a slight risk around it. 15% risk of flash flooding occurring in the yellow areas. So this is going to be a big topic. A little closer look at that once again. And they might extend this into the New York City area, maybe all the way into southern New England. So southeast today, there's enough flow now moving in place as the ridge is starting to get sort of beat down. So we're going to have just showers and storms. And this is about the middle of the afternoon. You see some storms across Mississippi, northern Georgia, areas of the Carolinas, up into Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, pop-up activity. And even though not everybody will get rain out of this, whoever does could get flash flooding. The atmosphere is loaded down here too, especially in eastern North Carolina. So watch out for flash flooding. I wouldn't be surprised if they extend a higher flash flooding risk all the way down into eastern North Carolina for today. We'll see what happens with that. But the Northeast, a big storyline here. This rain will continue to sort of slowly scoot eastward, and then more thunderstorm development will get going here down here. And this is where the storms could be severe. More so just a heavy rain up here in like the southern tier of New York, southern New England. But once you get down here, it'll warm up into the mid-Atlantic. And some of these storms could hit severe limits. And could get some storms in northern Kentucky and West Virginia, down into the mid-Atlantic also. So, of course, let's just take a closer look at all this. The D.C. area first shows all of Maryland, Delaware, northern Virginia, areas of West Virginia. And we start to get into 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., see those storms popping up. But as we get into about 7 to 8 p.m., this is where we could get a nasty line of storms that works its way through the panhandle of West Virginia, through Maryland. This is where it could be around 8 o'clock, knock on the doorstep of Baltimore, D.C., and then it moves into these areas and slams you guys with some heavy, heavy rain. The atmosphere is going to be loaded. This is 10 p.m. Damaging winds are possible. This is 11. This is midnight. This is 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So a lot of rain is possible in this area. And we will look at how much rainfall is forecast between now and about, let's just go next 72 hours. Between now and about Saturday, a few inches of rain is likely, and a lot of this will happen today into tonight. So I know 2 inches of rain don't seem like a lot, but it's not going to take much in this area. And I think many areas could get a lot more rain than this. So PA will move through here. This is 2 p.m., 3 p.m. More so just light to moderate rain, times heavy rain up here in northern PA and in the southern tier of New York. But once you get down to Somerset, State College, Harrisburg, Allentown, Lancaster, you're going to get some strong to severe thunderstorms, and these could produce damaging winds. I wouldn't rule out a tornado either. Very heavy rainfall. This is 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., come on, 9 p.m., and then the storms look to kind of surge down into the mid-Atlantic. And once again, you look at this area as far as how much rainfall is forecast. And most of your rainfall, heavier stuff, is going to be down here in southeast and eastern PA, where 1 to 3 inches of rain could fall. Now, we round this off by looking at, New York City up to Boston, and starting off around lunchtime, we start to get to about 3 p.m. Here comes the thunderstorms popping up. They'll be kind of pop up in nature at first, and then eventually we could get just kind of clusters of storms. This is 5 p.m. This is 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Look at how heavy that rainfall looks right over New York City along Island. Listen, I'm telling you, this is going to drop buckets of rain on you guys. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and then 10 p.m. Still raining very hard out in southern New England. And it could eventually slow down by the time we get into midnight, and some dry air will begin to move in around the New York City area, but could still deal with some showers and storms. And same thing, we'll look at how much rainfall can happen in this region. And just 1 to 3 inches of rain is the general theme. But, New Jersey, around the Trenton, Philadelphia area, you could get closer to 3 to 4, 5 inches of rain. So we're going to have some isolated totals, or we're going to get more rain than what's being forecast. I'm going to tell you that right off the dot. So don't let that surprise you. And this is really driven off a very moist surge of air right ahead of a cold front. You can see the drier air. And this is the precipitation water values predicted off the HRRR model. And anytime you get over 2.5 inches as far as the precipitation water values, this means that the atmosphere is completely loaded. But you got some pockets that are pushing over 2.5 inches going across the mid-Atlantic. So a very moist surge of air, very big surge of moist air is going to go through this area over the next 24 hours, especially really the next 12 to 18 hours. So the south central U.S., just normal summer type stuff from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Northeast Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, just some thunderstorms dancing around. And some of these could be strong to severe in Arkansas. And then we get to tomorrow morning, we're probably going to be waking up to some action. But a closer look at like Colorado, you guys could definitely see some heavier action up here, especially the further north and east you get. Sterling, watch out for a strong to severe storm or two up here around 6, 7, 8 o'clock. These could produce damaging winds, large hail. This is 10, this is 11, this is midnight. Things should begin to calm down after that. The north central U.S., not a whole lot to speak on. Just drier, calmer conditions moving ahead for now. Enjoy your nice day. It'll be cooler for sure, but not a whole lot to speak on. And the western U.S., same deal. Big surge of moisture all the way up through New Mexico, Colorado, but that's been the general theme for the last several weeks. And some of these storms could pack more of a punch in Wyoming, where you guys do have a slight risk in place. This is 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. We had, I think, a tornado in Wyoming yesterday. But some of these storms could pack a punch, could produce another tornado here in Wyoming. Large hail, damaging winds, the biggest threat here. So, temperatures, you can see the rain-cooled air across Indiana to Ohio into northern PA, the southern tier of New York, all the way into New England. 60s for highs. But you get south and away from that slug of rain, it gets into the 80s and 90s across the southeast. Much nicer conditions. And, of course, you see the cooler air across the north central area of the country and just typical warmth across the western U.S. Above average in certain areas, though. So, that's all I got. It's a mouthful. Let's stop it here and create a timestamp. And, cool. Guys, I wasn't quite sure if I've already done this Bible verse, but I thought let's do it again. In fact, me and the family are in the process of memorizing this one. We pretty much got it memorized. We're trying to memorize a Bible verse every single week, and we've memorized a few so far. So, but this morning, Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be provided for you. A couple things I put. It's pretty straightforward, right? I said, put God first in everything you do. Seek God's will and not your own. Pray for his will in situations. And we've talked about that many times. When you go to prayer, don't just pray that what you want to work out will happen. Pray for God's will in the situation. For example, I mentioned my YouTube thing last night's community post, and made a post, and it turns out many other people are going through the same thing, with the revenue issues. And, I'm on edge about it because of what happened last year. If you don't, it's like, Mitch, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, just to sum it up, my channel got hit with invalid traffic for about a month last hurricane season, from about, it was like a portion of September through October. And like I said, make a long story short, YouTube ended up yanking a lot of money from me from covering Helene, and just, anyways. But it's got me a little on edge, just like a little tick of anxiety as I go into this hurricane season, just worrying it's going to happen again. So when I saw that, I was like immediately like, God, what's up? And can you please, can we fix this? But even with that, I pray that, hey, God, whatever happens with this, your will be done. I know that it's going to be okay regardless, right? So moving past that, it says, Scripture says, and all these things will be provided for you. Means if you prioritize him, everything will be provided for you to make it in this life. And also said, this may not always satisfy your earthly desires, especially your comfort zone. But making God first and the salvation that comes with it is a greater value than the world's riches. So A lot of times, we'll pray for something. We really, really, really want it to happen, right? But you do the right thing and you pray for God's will on it. You make that first, you make that right step in praying, and you get a pretty clear sign to go one direction, but that one direction is not really where you want to go, right? So you end up going your own direction anyways, and maybe it doesn't happen right off the dot. Maybe it takes a day or two. Maybe it takes a few weeks, a few months, maybe a couple years down the road, and all of a sudden, some things happen and you realize that you made the wrong choice. And doesn't mean that God's going to give up on you. It just means that, like I mentioned many times, God, God's always going to reroute your path. Except, when he has to reroute it over and over and over again, the route back is going to be longer and harder, right? So, and I guess what I'm trying to say is you got to make him the priority in everything you do, through your prayers, your actions, and all of that. Even if it's going to take you to a place that's going to make you uncomfortable, you got to follow his will in your life. I say that so much, and I feel like a lot of things just go back to that. So, just prioritize him, seek his kingdom, what he wants you to do. Be obedient, have faith, and listen. I know I say this over and over again, but I'm speaking to myself here, guys. I'm not just speaking to y'all. I hope y'all know that I get just as much out of this than y'all do. Trust me. So I'm speaking to myself. It's like when I do these sometimes, I'm giving myself a pep talk. Because I struggle. I don't want you guys to think I come on here and I got it all together. I struggle just like you guys every single day. I was having a rough morning this morning. I'm imperfect. Nobody's perfect, right? So I'm doing this ride along with you guys just like y'all are. So trust me, I get it. But we have to keep on renewing our mind with this, right? And it helps us. So God bless all. That's a 37-minute banger right there. Whew. Anyways, God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon. God bless.